Lifestyle Pirates with Big J and Adriano.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to this morning's episode of Lifestyle Pirates. We're joined here this morning by Simon Hicks. How are you, Squire?
Good morning. Ahoy, I've wanted to do this. Ahoy, Lifestyle Pirates, permission to come aboard.
Yarr! Permission granted, mate, with that shirt, permission granted. It's obviously a Caribbean theme today, mate.
It's sunny in paradise, so I thought, it's the first one they've had in a while, so I thought I'd crack it out. It's just,
it's
beautiful
lovely
shirt,
day.
beautiful weather.
Mate, it's looking delicious. Thank you for coming along. You have been in artificial intelligence, AI, for over 5 years, so we're going to be talking about that today. It's a very broad topic, so we'll see where we go. We've got time on our hands. Yeah. You've done it for over 5 years. What got you into AI, buddy?
I started working in conversational AI, I suppose, out of interest, a bit by chance. A friend of mine was working at an Australian startup company called Flamingo, which was founded by Dr. Katrina Wallace, conversational AI practice, and they were basically about 25 guys, most of whom were engineers, data scientists, and very, very bright people. And they needed to balance things out, obviously. So they invited me to come and join them.
They needed a token POM.
Yeah, absolutely. They needed somebody to come and help them with the commercial side of the business. So, I've been doing all kinds of stuff: sales, partnerships, business development, problem solving, relationship management, engagement management, all kinds of different things when I was at Flamingo. I was there for around a year and I learned a lot. And I really got a buzz out of working in AI.
Yeah.
Because I was supposed to be there for a month just to help out a mate. And then, conversational AI is pretty cool stuff. And the concept of artificial intelligence and how it might scale up to help humanity is really cool. And then I started working for another company, my current provider, where conversational AI has kind of grown. And I just love it. I work with all kinds of different organizations. Across all different industries. That's the cool thing about AI is that it's agnostic from an industry perspective. Mm-hmm. So I work with day-to-day, I work with banks, insurance companies, healthcare providers, and we try and support what they do through the use of conversational AI. And I suppose my role is problem solving through technology.
So what is conversational AI?
Conversational AI, if we think about the different types of AI that are kind of around at the moment, there's obviously a lot of technology that's available to help analyze data because there was the advent of big data a few years ago.
Yep.
So organizations realized they had data and they were like, right, we've got to do something with it. Let's warehouse big data. Okay, cool. We've got it. We've warehoused it. Now what do we do? So lots of people are doing lots of different things with data and analytics.
And when you say warehouse big data, are we literally talking in a warehouse? I'm just asking for the layman.
No.
It was a question. Someone wrote in and asked in 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is. Yeah, there's physical fabrications where you store data. Amazon, Google,
big
all
server
of them.
farms.
Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. That's where they keep it.
Cool.
Not an actual farm as well.
No. The reason I'm asking is because AI. We're gonna unpack this today, and we're not even going to scratch the surface. I don't think within the hour, but there's a lot of concern and confusion around it because it is. I don't think people understand what it is. So this, big data. Well, what is big data? When you say where all that stuff, what actually is that to the layman? So I will be asking layman questions today.
Oh, please do. And I think it's a great point. And I get asked all kinds of weird and wonderful questions. Some really straightforward and some really complex. And
I bet you I'm going to be one of those weird questions today because I must admit AI has been probably a fantasy for me for. Yeah. Growing up, I always fantasize about artificial intelligence, and so I'm really excited to see where this conversation is going to go.
Right. He's been like a puppy today. Like when we take a puppy for a walk, the tail's just like. He's just been so excited, and then you rocked up. But I interrupted. Sorry. So what is AI?
So sorry. No. So let me just finish about what conversational AI is. So if you capture data and then you want to understand what that data shows you about anything, your customers, users, interaction between machines. It could be something like Cisco routers or something like that. Big data can help. Well, data analytics can help you, and big data is a portion of that. Conversational AI is much more about enabling organizations to talk to staff, talk to you. We talk about users. We shouldn't talk about users. Talk to customers. It's all about how you communicate. It's just communicating And if you think about traditional models of communication, perhaps this is a different way of putting it. If you think about traditional ways of communicating between an organisation, say your insurer or your telecoms provider, you call up a contact centre, and you have a really quite poor experience, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you agree? Mm-hmm. I always pick on the telecoms guys because nobody ever has anything to say.
They're the worst.
They are.
How are they still so bad at it?
Well, they spent a lot of money not being poor at it. And I think this is where the advent of conversational AI really lends itself to improving customer service. I take a very simple approach that when you reach out to your provider of services, financial, telecoms, whatever, you don't want to have a chat with them. You want to get something done. So really, your speed to execution is the most critical thing. And not just speed for the sake of speed. You want it to be robust and secure. But you actually want to execute a task as soon as possible. What happens when you go online, when you call up a contact center and you get stuck on hold for 20 minutes and 30 minutes and then you get put through to somebody and then like, oh, you've come through to the wrong department and then they push you somewhere else. Oh, sorry, I can't help you with that. Can you call this number back? And it's just the most frustrating, wretched situation. And it's like, well, from a customer perspective, I've got an issue or I want to do something. I might want to buy something from you. You know, I might want to give you money for something. I just want to get that done as soon as possible. And conversational AI enables organizations to do that. My organization, we work with a very large global telecoms provider, and we're in Peru, and we have a conversational agent has 6 million conversations a month with customers via voice, and the intent recognition, which is kind of like how much does she actually understand when she's talking to a person, is well into the 90s.
It's got a gender. She.
Yeah, our product does. Yeah, absolutely. Most do, right?
Sorry, intent recognition.
Intent recognition. So when you communicate with each other, what is intent? You phone up an organization because you want to do something. What you want to do is what is your intention and your intent. So when a piece of conversational AI reads or listens to what people are saying or reads what you type in a chat or whatever that might be, we measure its ability to recognize its facility to understand your intent.
So this is almost looking at the next step of that conversation. So it's not reacting to the request or the initial question. It's processing that, but then going, I think we're going to go down this path.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you kind of getting there. Yeah. So if we think about, say, chatbots, which are kind of 2017 was the year of the chatbot, believe it or not, a couple of years ago now. Chatbots are typically rules-based pieces of software that identify specific words that you use within a sentence. So
are they those things that pop up when on the homepage? Like, hi, I'm Alan. Can I help?
Yeah,
right.
Alan's a great name for a chatbot. I've never seen a chatbot called Alan, but that's great. Absolutely. And then what they're doing is they match a word with a potential outcome, and then they'll offer that to you. So you could turn around to an organisation, and I did this with an Australian superannuation provider, where I went and had a chat with their chatbot, and I do spend time chatting to chatbots. I know that sounds a bit weird. But I tested it because I asked it what is superannuation or what is super, and it told me what superannuation is. And then I asked it what is a super yacht, and it told me what superannuation is. So there's a great example of where rules-based technology, chatbots, works and doesn't work because it's matching super and going, oh, well, you've come to me, you must. I mean, most super.
It's very limited.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we then start talking about conversational AI and digital assistance, it's a lot more. The development of the technologies isn't just looking at words in a sentence; it's understanding your intent. So you might turn around to our technology and you might give it some instruction like, "Hi, I'd like to pay John Sermon and Adriano $200 on Monday out of my savings account. Can you mark it Lifestyle Pirates or something like that?"
I'm a massive fan of that one.
Yeah, I thought you might be right. So within that one sentence, I have given a lot of entity. There's a lot of entities and there's intention behind that. Mm-hmm. So most technology and most software would pick out, you want to make a payment. And then it would go, and who do you want to pay? And they would say, and how much money do you want to pay them? And it would just go through this really. Yeah. Whereas our technology understands your intent, recognizes the different entities within that, recognizes what you want to do, and then enables you to do that. So it's like, so its next question would be, if, for example, I didn't have any money in my savings account, it would say, hey, you need to move money across to be able to do that. I can do that for you. Would you like me to do it? And it would just get on and do it. And that is a much better experience, I think. And call me biased because I work in the field.
Yeah.
But that's a much better experience from a customer's perspective.
So that's conversational AI.
So that's conversational AI. Sorry, I know we are at risk of rabbit holes today,
Oh,
chaps. So
fantastic.
if I go
you should have seen me last night on YouTube. I went down a rabbit hole.
So let's come back out. What is AI? So again, I'm Mr. Layman
I'm not
today.
there yet.
What is AI?
I wanted to know about that chat box more. It sounds like early sort of text-based games. So like from the 80s, remember like Leisure Suit Larry?
Yes.
Like the original text-based version?
Yeah.
Chatbox is just so much later.
Just
Like Leisure Suit Larry was doing that years ago.
I know, right?
Number 1, 2, and 3, cracking games as well. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make the connection
No,
there.
it's all right, go for it. All you boots. Sorry, was there a question there, Adrian? Or was
I don't believe so. What is AI? Let's move on to AI. Sorry, John.
I suppose in fairly straightforward terms, artificial intelligence is the concept that machines that mimic humans in the simplest of kind of terms. And I think actually artificial intelligence, you can say it in simple terms, but then also it depends in your perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So we can take a simple perspective, which is artificial intelligence is machines that mimic humans. Mm-hmm. Philosophically, you could turn around and you can go a lot deeper.
Yeah,
which is I'm kind of semi hoping we're going to
get
to do that
we
today.
will.
Because I think machines mimicking human beings, okay, cool. But actually, if you look across history at how the interplay between humans and machines has spread and developed across millennia, there is a huge philosophical question about what is it that makes us human? Because if a machine that mimics a human, you have to understand what is a human, or you have to perceive what a human is first and foremost. And there's a huge, and when you look at guys like Alan Turing was the kind of the founding father of artificial intelligence, and he wrote 2 papers, one in 36 and one in 52 or 54 or something like that. And the way he approached it, and he didn't know, he was the founding father of computer science without knowing it, right? So it all has to be relative. We also have to think about what was going on at the time. Computers in the 1930s were human beings doing mathematics, doing equations. So that raises a good point, because is intelligence doing mathematics equations? Maybe, but we're talking right now. Does that require intelligence? You have emotions. Does that require intelligence? And I think Turing then turned in time actually started measuring intelligence in terms of performance, which again, I'm still trying to get my head around a little bit. But again, it's artificial intelligence. I mean, again, just to kind of dial it back, it's machines that think, it's machines that mimic behavior. There has been, and what I'd like to do, if I might, is if we talk about what AI is, and we'll talk about what AI isn't, and we'll talk about robotics and AI. We'll talk about the interplay between AI and computers, and we'll probably talk about algorithms as well. So, but also we're going to talk about automata. Okay. So if we think about, because often people go, oh, AI, that's robots. No, it's not. Artificial intelligence, think of it. Artificial intelligence is like a kind of synthetic brain, a software brain, if you will, that thinks and determines and does all that kind of stuff. You've then got robotics, which is, and they're both kind of 20th century concepts, right? Robotics is more around a machine that performs labor. It's more to do with workforce. And actually there is interplay between the two. So if you think of a Venn diagram, you've got 2 circles. One has got robots in it. One has got artificial intelligence in it. You merge the 2 together just slightly. So then you can have artificially intelligent robots.
Yeah.
But they are, I think it's worth making the distinction of what they are and how distinct they are. And yes, there is interplay between the 2. In the same way that if we talk about artificial intelligence and computers, there's a lot of crossover between the 2. But again, a computer is a machine that, I was trying to think of a good way of explaining this in kind of straightforward terms. If we can consider that computers, and I think this is the other thing that I wanted to bring in, is that we use computers every day, be it on our phones or our laptops and that kind of thing. And we kind of take them for granted. Back when Alan Turing kind of first came up with the idea of artificial intelligence, computers didn't well, they existed in humans in their brains. And then it's all about, okay, well, let's build a machine that can do that. And that's literally how we came up with the ideas of computers and where we come from today. Computers are like the processing power, if you like, of artificial intelligence. So you can have artificial intelligence again, and you can have computers and they're two separate, distinct things or entities, but then they have interplay at the same time because artificial intelligence typically exists within a computer and are powered by computers. In the same way that I think it's worth making the distinction around algorithms, because algorithms are have been in mathematics for millennia. They're nothing new. And I know I watched The Social Dilemma this week. I was getting prepped. I was getting, okay. People keep saying,
scary show.
It's a scary show. But actually, and I was contemplating it. It's almost like it's a really good show. And if your listeners haven't watched it, I would recommend it. It's really good. It's really insightful. But there was a part of me that, upon reflection, felt that they were almost demonizing algorithms. Right? Algorithms are harmless. Right?
It's the intent.
It's a bit like an algorithm is a mathematical equation, for want of a better word, and they've existed for a very, very long time. They're also a building block within artificial intelligence, and you can put an algorithm upon an algorithm upon an algorithm upon an algorithm, and you can go from machine learning into deep learning, and you can go and start looking at artificial intelligence that's based on the neocortexes and all kind like the shape of our brains and all kinds of stuff. But inherently, and again, Social Dilemma, I felt, and hopefully I'm explaining this clearly, I felt they were almost demonizing an algorithm. And it's like, no, it's a bit like, we were just talking about this before, weren't we? In terms of, it's a bit like a gun. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. It's a means to an end. So with the program, they're like, oh, you've got, and sorry, spoiler alert. Geez, we can edit that and put in a spoiler alert and all that kind of stuff. Right?
We will.
To demonize an algorithm and say, oh well, these companies, they put together algorithms and they're off doing their thing and they're highly dangerous. Depends what you're trying to do with them, and it depends who's built them, and it depends what the intention of is the person that put them together.
I think they're sort of putting that out in the open as they do in The Social Dilemma, because all of that stuff that you talk about, algorithms and all of the packet data and cookies that have sort of absorbed into these programs that run these calculations, they're not monitored, or they're not regulated, sorry.
Exactly.
So, the outcome of let's say, a vote for the presidency, topical at the moment, could that have been sort of swayed by someone's phone and like the propaganda or it's so like what he sees on his phone and what I see on my phone is completely different. Like there needs to be some sort of regulation with that stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the trick, right? And I think they make it on that program. That's if you work in a bank, if banks, insurance companies, telcos, TV industry, it's all highly regulated. And you can't, you're not allowed to show, like if you think of kids' TV, they're not allowed to show adverts for KFC or what, I don't know, making it up, but to protect people. And yet social media, which is everywhere and contacts everybody, is not regulated. And we're reliant upon giant organizations with a lot of money who want to make more money to self-regulate.
And they also have bias.
Well, So we can definitely talk about unconscious bias and bias in technology and AI and all that kind of stuff. 100%.
So I think just one of my takeouts from from what you've just been saying in terms of your day to day, and the Social Dilemma is the AI is used for different reasons. So in the social media world, they are obviously competing for your attention and to try and get you to stay on these platforms. Whereas in your world, you're trying to bring in efficiencies and make the user experience better and streamlined. Is that right? So you're solving a different problem, but
100%.
But they're using the same. It's the same, and this is the beauty of today because it's the same term, but just different
100%.
Different use cases.
That's a really good point, right? We're trying to help organizations have better conversations with their customers or their staff to drive better outcomes. Organizations that are discussed and raised in this documentary, they're trying to monetize your attention.
Yeah.
And they do that using algorithms and AI that help to do that. And I share this with you. I watched it and I've been thinking for a while, you know what, I spend far too much time wasted on social media every day.
Yeah.
So I've just removed, and I'm not on Instagram and I'm not on Twitter or anything like that. I just don't have the time. But Facebook, geez, I've been getting stuck into the videos a bit too often. So I've just taken it off my phone. And I feel really good.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a little girl and it's like, I don't know why why am I wasting my time looking at cat videos or, you know.
Cat videos are pretty good.
Oh, mate, they're good for the soul. But at the same time, there can be people with nefarious means putting cat videos out there to try and capture your attention. It's nonsense. And it was. I don't think that too many documentaries actually motivate you to go and do something, make a change. But I was like, you know what, this is so true.
So before you mentioned, obviously conversational AI, how many different types of AI are there? Can you sort of put it into
sure, absolutely
subcategories or
absolutely
just main categories? Yeah.
So there's the three main ones that we talk about are narrow, general, and super. I'm not in four fingers up, but that's okay. Narrow, general, and super. Narrow artificial intelligence is the bulk of what we see today available in society, available to us as consumers. It's basically technology that can perform some tasks that a human being might perform. I mean, arguably, if it's
that's a chat box, isn't it? That's a narrow.
In terms of
so do one task.
A chat bot is very much is narrow. It just does one task. It's kind of it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
General artificial intelligence is intelligence that can perform tasks to the same level as a human being. And then super artificial intelligence is technology that can perform a task that a human can do and can outperform a human. Well, it could be by a few degrees or it could be exponentially. And that's when most people get really terrified and scared.
And where are we?
Narrow artificial intelligence is kind of there.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of focus on us getting more into general, and there's you read a bunch of statistics about we're going to be super AI by 2050. I'm personally, obviously this is my personal thought on this, I just don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get there.
I heard the number 2045.
Yeah.
Down that rabbit hole on YouTube that I was going on.
Out of interest, what industries, am I right in thinking that different industries are going to be different stages? So some industries still might be in the narrow side, other industries might be general, and some industries might be more in that super AI side.
No, it's much more of a kind of super AIs. Nobody's doing that.
Just no one's doing it. Okay.
Arguably, I don't think anybody's really doing general AI.
Right.
Because again,
globally, or are we focusing here on Australia?
No, just globally.
Right.
Because think about it, right? You read, there's a lot of really cool tech out there, right? See the CEO of Google last year. There's a video clip of him, and he's got a conversational agent, and he uses it to book himself a haircut. And they talk to a human being, and the human being's like, they didn't know. They just thought they were talking to another person. It's like, okay, great.
That's freaky.
Is it?
Yeah. The person on the other line didn't know he was talking to a robot, and this robot's just made a full booking.
Yeah, but think about the context of what they're doing. You phone up, hey,
I suppose it's very sort of linear in what you're going to ask.
Yeah, right.
Are you going to take a booking? Yeah,
right.
It's not like what are you doing on the weekend as well. It's like
exactly, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you order a takeaway and that delivers. You don't speak to anybody.
No, I try not to speak to anybody ever. To be honest.
Good job we do a podcast, don't they? But you order a pizza or a takeaway and you're not speaking to anybody. That you're doing a transaction, it arrives at your door.
Oh, yeah. I know, but it's not talking to me. Siri does, but they've done the latest update of iOS, and Siri's just absolutely useless now.
So
used to be much better.
Yeah, well.
So is Siri that conversational AI?
No,
it'll be more narrow, wouldn't it?
Yeah, my perspective on Siri is that she's an order taker. So it very much performs this role where you have humans and then you have a machine that behaves like a servant, right? You ask Siri something, she'll tell it to you, but she's not going to have a conversation. And they've added all like cool sassy Siri, you use a rude word and she's like, I don't appreciate that. Or she might say something like you can dial a sass up and down and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But again, it's just responding to words as opposed to having an actual conversation. sorry, we were talking about narrow artificial intelligence and Google and the demonstration that they did. It's a case of, that's the point I wanted to make. It's like, okay, cool. So you've got artificial intelligence that can book a haircut. Okay, cool. But is it going to make me a cup of coffee? No. All of the majority of technology that we see at the moment, it just does one thing very, very well.
Yeah.
So playing chess. There's a Korean board game called Go, and it's the most complex game ever invented by humankind. And of course, the guys from DeepMind got hold of it, and they created a machine that could play Go, and it beat the world champion in 2019. They played 5 games. It beat the human 4 games to 1. And I'll be honest, there was some people who read about this and come and talk to me, and they kind of freak out a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's really impressive. But if you think about the parameters under which that technology has been developed and the way that they developed it, it was basically playing itself for days on end.
Yeah, and figuring it out.
And hundreds of times over and over and over and over and over again. And it can do that at scale because it's a piece of machine and doesn't sleep, and it doesn't have an argument with its partner or get upset. It just, all it does. It's all it does.
It also would have learnt from that loss.
It would have done. And what's interesting, I think there's a play, it's called Move 37 or Move 78. I think that's what it was. No, so there's 2 things in this. It's pretty cool. So the machine, so you've obviously got a machine and a human playing each other, and there's all these Go experts watching these 2 go at it kind of thing. And the machine played a famous Move 37, and Move 37 was like, why are you doing that? See, the machine's rubbish. It's not going to work. And then 2 or 3 moves later, it made absolute sense, and it went on to win the game and all this kind of stuff. And they can track it back to that Move 37. But then at the same time, the one game that the human won, they had Move 78. And the human, and I can't remember the guy's name, and I'd probably just mess it up if I tried to pronounce it. Move 78, the machine looked at it and was like, this is bonkers. Why is this guy doing it? And it was the move that went on to win. Yeah. Right? Again, so amazing. Like Google DeepMind, and I'm not trying to keep name dropping Google in here. They've done some amazing technology, and it's fascinating. At the same time, it's just doing one thing. You know, and I think that's where it will get scary is when you see machines that are doing multiple tasks, and perhaps you'll see that interface between AI and robotics, and you'll see it actually in a tangible human form.
So you mentioned 2050 roughly for superintelligence. When do you think we'll see, like, is that sentience? Do you think we'll see sentience in sort of AI?
So forgive me, I know a lot of people think that we're going to be at 2050 is when we get to super AI. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. I think it's going to be much, much further into the future.
Really?
Yeah. Again, it's all relative,
because
right?
once we get close to that sort of peak, it really accelerates quickly, doesn't it? Because then it's just figuring shit out even quicker. And
well, I think you can see now the technology has reached a speed of development that is exponential. Like the development of technology now is just vast, and it just outpaces the abilities for humans to develop. And it's proven that that's where we're at. So, and obviously that will help drive us towards super AI if ever we realize it. And again, the whole idea of having a sentient machine. Okay, so we realize super AI, but does that then manifest itself in a sentient being? Well, I don't know, because you could turn around and say, right, well, think of the most advanced neurosurgeon in the world, right? So, as we said, if super artificial intelligence can outperform a human, right, and that's the concept that we kind of work to with these 3 ideas. You could say, right, well, you've developed an AI, a surgeon, an AI surgeon, and it can do it better than a human. Does it have to be sentient to be better than a human? No, because it can. No, exactly right. So,
sorry, layman question.
Yeah,
sentient.
Sentience is to do with being self-aware. I think is the easiest way to put it. So we are sentient beings. We're aware of each other. We're aware of what we perceive in front of us. Again, we could go down a rabbit hole with we could go all Matrix and all kinds of stuff this morning, which is kind of cool, but perhaps we don't want to go down there just yet. But the idea of sentience is being self-awareness. We have, and that's, again, that is fundamentally one of the things that makes us human, right? But again, it's all relative to the individual as to what makes us human. Sentience is one of them.
Mate, over to you. You've got so many. You've got so many questions.
Well, I'm actually going to open up a few of these. So, one thing that also always comes up with artificial intelligence is unemployment.
Yeah.
You know, are we going to get to a state where we've created these robots that do all of these tasks, and there's no sort of reason for manual labor for humans? How far away do you think we are from that? What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a possibility? Are we trying to do that?
Yeah.
Is there danger in that?
Oh man, you'll have to go through these questions again in a minute. I think just one step at a time. One step at a time. In terms of, it's interesting. People's minds go to what will the robots do when they come? What will the AI? What's going to do? What does it mean for us? Right now, in the job that I do, we see the creation of jobs through new technology and artificial intelligence. Right. So to assume that perhaps if we look at it, we're making an assumption that there are a finite number of jobs that exist, tasks that exist, and we might get to a stage in the future where we've got a machine to do all of them, and then human beings performing those tasks then become redundant. But I think that perhaps we need to give due consideration to the fact that new machines and new technology will create new jobs, and it's a self-perpetuating cycle. I think there is, if we dial it back a little bit, I think there's a huge need in society for technology to take the burden of tasks that need to be done that we don't do very well. So think of aged care,
but that are mundane as well. So you could also add into that equation that if the stuff that you're working on is taking the mundane out of someone's day, that enables them to be more creative.
Yep.
That enables them to maybe start businesses, maybe think of new things. So it adds to that cycle. Yeah. And then in years to come, that stuff will become boring. And then actually we're able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at, so for example, I'm going to go back to superannuation. No particular reason.
Well, you were saying about healthcare. Why did you bring up healthcare?
Because one of the challenges in Australia, for example, and most of the Western world, the aging population is a challenge, right? There are not enough young people to care for the old, and yet there will be more old people in the future than there are right now because there are fewer younger people. It's as simple as that. So people who work in aged care, people who work in disability care, people who work in nursing care work really hard. They don't get paid very much money in Australia, and I speak from experience of one of my clients to this. English isn't typically a first language. There's high staff turnover because they come and go. People might do one shift, they might be there 3 shifts, and then they'll leave and whatever. And yet people invest a large amount of money to have a consistent high quality level of care for the aged, for people with disabilities, for whomever. Yes, please, mate. And people entering the job market or in the job market do not want to do those jobs. So how do we overcome those challenges? Well, technology, artificially intelligent machines, arguably could help. And actually, if you look at some elements of healthcare, machines can actually do a better job than human beings.
How can they help? Out of interest,
help.
Where are they helping?
So, well, this is the thing. This is what a lot of people are working on. So it's a case of. So if we look at so many areas that we could help. One area that I'm working on at the moment is with an organisation where they're trying to relieve the administrative burden that their staff have to go through every day, so that individuals can spend more time with their customers. I was up in Queensland last year, and I was talking to a very impressive individual called Dr. Liz Kenny, who's a senior oncologist. She's got an Order of Australia, very cool person. She's probably not listening to this, but she's an absolutely inspirational person. We were having a conversation. I was doing a presentation in front of a bunch of healthcare professionals, and afterwards we were having a chat, and it was basically like, it is scientifically proven that the more time that she as an oncologist and her staff can spend with cancer patients, there is a higher chance of survival for those patients. And yet, every hour that is spent, the majority of that hour, let's say it's 45, 50 minutes, is dealing with admin. So you have, in that instance, you have a highly trained individual who has some amazing skills to go and help people, and yet they are burdened by admin. So why couldn't we go and train a piece of technology, an artificially intelligent machine, to go and help streamline that process, that admin process, take the burden, relieve the congestion, take away that mundane stuff, so that individual can then go and have, even if it was an extra 2 minutes. And again, this pulls on your heartstrings, and I'm always trying to be objective when we talk about this, but surely that is a good outcome, and that is a good use of artificial intelligence to help society. And again, the challenges around healthcare, aged care, disability care, I think there's a real call for different ways of doing it, because there's just not enough people in the system. And it's hard. I mean, you think about young people who it's like, okay, cool. So you left school, you've done your HSC, you go to university. How many of them are going to want to turn around and go and work in an aged care facility? And again, please don't think I'm being derogatory or anything like that. But I'm just trying to objectify and break things down in terms of these are the real life challenges that we see, and we can really use the technology to make a difference. And I think that we just all benefit from that. If you had your granny in an aged care facility, and you knew that she was getting better quality of care, better quality of life, that make you feel good, right? You'd be like, great. She'd feel good. You'd feel good. The people around the service provider delivering that service would feel better. So, well, why can't we do that?
So I think to Adriana's question around the unemployment side, do you think when we talk about AI, people's mind just goes straight to negative? Like, do you think we go to Terminator 2?
Yeah.
I do.
You know what? I've spoken at numerous events, and the Terminator 2 thing comes up so many times. And actually, I've actually, it fascinates me because it just comes up so much. And it's like, why do people always go for this? And I did,
because he said it on the film. Yeah, I'll be back. That was rubbish. I'm sorry.
It was absolutely horrible.
I think that it's the fascination of power dynamics in machines and in the relationship between humans and machines is millennia old, right? So let's go back. Ready? This is like Bill and Ted moment. Let's go back to ancient Greece, right? And we're going back to around the 8th century before. I'm just going to look at my notes because I always forget the name of the mythical character that I'm going to talk about. Greek mythology, Prometheus. That's what we're going to talk about, right? I'm always like movie. Poseidon. What are we doing? Prometheus, right? So Prometheus is written is reckoned to be written in the 8th century. Prometheus is a deity, a god, if you like, a trickster god who is supposed to have stolen the gift of fire and given it to mankind, right? And when the Greek gods found out about this, they weren't too pleased, as you can imagine. Nobody likes being stolen from, right? So as punishment, and this is amazing punishment, I love this, Prometheus was chained to a rock for eternity. And just as a segue, Greek society believed that your liver was the what's the word? Your liver is like your brain, your heart. That's where what makes you human, that's where it comes from. So obviously it has quite a lot of meaning. You might be like, what have livers got to do with it? So anyway, Prometheus is chained to this rock, and every day a bird would come down and eat his liver, right? And then it would regrow overnight, and then the bird would come back, right? And you're looking at me like, what are you smoking, mate? The bird that comes and eats Prometheus's liver was the servant or pet of Vulcan, and it is an automata. It is a machine, right? So we can trace back the concept of machines and automata. An automata, so you can get a feel for it, is a self-moving device, right? So it's a piece of machinery or a piece of engineering, right? And every day it would come down and consume the liver. Now, the reason why I raise that is because what I'm trying to reflect on is that the human obsession, and I call it an obsession, fascination, however you want to put it, interest in power dynamics between humankind and machines, is this master and servant play. And automata have existed ever since. I mean, now it's like Christmas is coming up. You go past the Christmas shops and you've got a Santa sat waving at you. Ho, ho, ho. have you been good this year and all that nonsense. That is an automata. It's a self-moving machine, right? But it's built, and I use the analogy of Santa in a shop window because it's built to perform for our pleasure, if you will, right? If you roll forward to the 1st century of the modern era, there's this guy called Hero of Alexandria, which I think is a great name. I think there should be more people called Hero in the world, right? It's a great name, right? But this is the first time moving away from mythology into the more humankind's exploring the practical application of automata. This is a guy who basically wrote about going into the temple and the doors open without you having to do anything. He's also the guy who came up with the kind of the Greek, at the time, the equivalent of a vending machine, right? And it's all about this automata. They perform, they're self-moving machines, and they perform for us, right? But it's always, we are the masters and they are servants. They perform for our pleasure, if you will, right? And everywhere throughout history where that occurs, people always question the power dynamic between, well, what happens if that was reversed, right? So often people talk to me about Terminator 2. But again, I think that's just that's a very natural thing, and it's been going on for a long, long time. So, and I think people get scared by AI, but I think that's just part of a natural fascination with the relationship between human beings and machines, and also machines that, if AI is technology that mimics humans, it's like, well, perhaps people know how crazy humans can be, and that's what kind of terrifies them a bit, you know? Because it's going to be like, well, we've had wars and the Cold War.
They can't be trusted.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, humans are scientifically proven to be unreliable, right, at best. So,
and that goes back to the bias question, the bias conversation we had earlier on.
Yeah, 100%. How do you program AI? Because AI will have to work off probabilities and stuff like that, algorithms. So there has to be a bias in it, like built into it. Yeah. Like to be able to distinguish which decision to make as a bias. So how do you sort of, like there's been proven sort of studies that, social biases and everything can be programmed into AI, and they actually make these decisions that, could be either racial or something else like that. So how do we sort of govern that? Like, do we need to govern it?
Yes, we absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think, so a couple of years ago, and I was trying to find the article I read, and I've read a lot of articles over the past 5 years, as you can imagine. There was a police department somewhere in North America, I believe it's in the USA, and it was basically, they built it to profile, I can't remember the word, profile individuals who might have committed crimes. And time and again, it would pick people of colour as being having a higher probability of committing a crime, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And where does that come from? Where does that bias come from? And again, I don't, these are important topics to discuss. If you have a group of individuals building technology and they all come from the same background, and perhaps they're all of a certain gender, they will have unconscious bias, and that will represent itself in their work.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you've got a bunch of white guys who are programming technology, and they all come from a similar socioeconomic background, and they all went to Ivy League universities, and they're all predisposed to certain things. Well, it is no surprise that those might then come through into their work. But to be fair, some of that will be unconscious. They just don't know they're doing it.
Yeah.
So how do you then regulate that?
Yeah.
You've got to regulate it first and foremost. And you've seen there's a huge, as artificial intelligence is kind of evolving and becoming more consumable and more available to us in a day-to-day facility, in our day-to-day lives, there is much more interest in AI and ethics. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah.
And it's obviously things, these shows like The Social Dilemma are going to ask even more questions about that, because I think people in government maybe don't understand how much things like algorithms within Facebook impact us, influence our behavior, and that's whether it's inciting violence towards people because they vote differently to you, or whether that's controlling our children and making them think that, making them scared to go out and do things because they put something on Facebook or whatever, TikTok or whatever, and then they get judged for it.
Yeah.
There's got to be more regulation, of course. Because, and again, I feel quite strongly that the idea of self-regulation, which I'm not trying to pick on big organizations, Mark Zuckerberg says, don't worry, we've got these algorithms, we're going to build more algorithms to control the algorithms. The whole idea of trillion-dollar organizations self-moderating, I just don't know how that works.
Yeah.
It's like, let's use an extreme example. If you're a heroin addict, you've got to then go and self-regulate because you're hooked on something.
Yeah.
What might, is that going to give you a really high probability of self-containment of, I'm not going to do it today. Like, no, it just doesn't. And I'm not trying to jump on, I'm not trying to be hysterical here. I'm not trying to, kind of, grab at these kind of weird and wonderful ideas. But the whole idea of self-regulation, as we talk about regulation, is just kind of bogus to me.
Yeah.
And again, I think it will go to government to do that, because government representatives are voted by the people for the people, or for the people by the people, whichever way around it goes. So ideally, they would have the public's health safety in their. Sorry, I'm not being very clear. They would have that as the highest degree. That's going to be paramount to them to help control that. But
So there's a ongoing sort of ongoing exercise that's going on at MIT. So you can go on their website and it's sort of, what would you choose? So there's a classic example of Tesla and automated cars where it's coming to an accident. You can there's two occupants in the car. There's two occupants in front of the car, and then there's an obstacle. You can either drive through, kill the two people on the road and survive, or crash, and then the two people die, but the two people outside, survive. And then the ethics behind what the car would choose to do in a situation like that. And they're constantly going through that sort of stuff. And I think there was an accident recently where Tesla, or like one of the Teslas, sort of had some freak out accident and someone died. That comes up so often now with when we talk about AI. How do we get past that sort of stumbling block?
That's a great question. And I think I have moments of objectivity when I consider this.
Yeah.
And I think part of me says we are developing technology, and that technology is an experiment. And experiments go wrong.
Yeah.
And people get hurt. Things get destroyed, damaged, animals, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, well, we don't live in a perfect world where to experiment doesn't result in things that are unforeseen.
Yeah.
So it's like, it almost has to happen. If we want these things, we have to accept. And I hope this doesn't, it doesn't come back to bite me in the arse in some way, shape or form. Yeah. But it's almost like, well, science is all about experiment, and some things you can plan for and some things you can't.
Well, going to the moon. Yeah. People die going to the moon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. It's just one of those things. It's just life, right?
Yeah.
That's a very blasé thing for me to say. I'm not trying to be that.
No.
I just think
with that shirt on, you can be blasé.
Thanks, it's really interesting. And that's interesting as well. Like self-driving cars. I know Elon Musk gets very excited about it. So there's a lot of stuff in the press about self-driving cars. I'm still like self-driving cars. Yeah, cool. And the technology to go and build a self-driving car is fantastic. And the people who build that stuff, like, geez Louise, they got to be seriously brainy people. Like, kudos to them. But self-driving cars, don't people drive cars because they enjoy it?
But I think it's just for a transportation thing. So if they have self-driving cars, imagine what that would do to the trucking industry in Europe. Yeah. You're going to have things that don't need to be manned, right? So, or, piloted by human. A computer that's controlling it, so the probability of mistake is lower.
Yep.
So yeah, self-driving cars is an enjoyment, but for stuff like that, for logistics reasons,
haulage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's just, and I suppose the other thing is that the advantage of AI is that if you could have, you could set it up so that all haulage goes at night, so that when people want to use the road, people are more inclined to use the road during the day. Happy day, all the haulage is going from 12 till 6 a.m. or something like that. So yeah, there's advantages to it. I was talking to some mates about it yesterday in terms of, again, I think people are like, wow, self-driving cars. How long's cruise control been around in the automotive industry?
That's autonomy level 1.
Exactly, but that's where it started, and that's where the extension comes from. It's not like abracadabra. There is boom self-driving cars. It's like it takes years to.
We're only up to autonomy level 2 in automotive industry, and there's 5 levels.
Yeah,
and the 5th level is like completely. You can read a book.
Yeah.
You know, we're at level 2. So even Tesla's driving car is not really a driving car. It's sort of, like you said, it's sort of narrow-minded in what it does. It knows what it's supposed to do, but it can't really think outside of that sort of parameter.
Yeah.
So it's the level 2 in the automotive industry. That's the kind of self-braking, the sensors
ADAS,
around the
so
car.
advanced driving assistance.
Right.
Autonomy level 1 is like cruise control.
Yep.
Level 2 is ADAS, advanced driving assistance, where it can sort of it knows how fast to go. Like it can use sort of GPS to understand what the speed limit is. It's got a radar where it detects the car in front. It can brake and self-brake and sort of mitigate traffic sort of conditions, but it can't really think for itself. Autonomy level 3 is now, I think the only car available with it is the Audi A8, but it's illegal to use. Yeah. So
why is that?
Well,
it's not ready yet.
It's not. Well, think about how much legislation will have to go through before you can just let that happen.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's where it can turn and do, but it's still sort of narrow-minded in itself.
Yeah.
It's not level 5 where it's mate, jump in.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have a steering wheel anymore. So that's autonomy level 5.
That's an interesting point. So you've said level 3 in the car world is not there because of legislation.
Correct.
Yet the stuff we've been talking about, there's not much legislation at all.
Yeah, well,
and it's more advanced.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's less fear of death. You know, in a car, it's very easy to kill someone.
But
whereas unregulated
Facebook messaging.
Yeah, but then you got people killing themselves all the time with social
100%.
media.
I'm totally in agreement with you, and it's a great point. Yeah, so like we're legislating level 3 autonomy in cars. Facebook and all of those people, and what you said, self-regulating themselves, like that's preposterous. Like why would they wouldn't do that? No, not in a capitalist world that we live in.
Exactly right, and that's the thing. So it's like if it's all about the money, then organisations like okay, cool. We love making money, and we do it because we figured out how to. We figured out how human brains work, and we figured out how to build within our social media platforms. Cues, events, whatever it might be, items that trigger people to come back and have our attention, and it's like we need to calm that down, self-regulate. Okay,
yeah,
I love the money.
Yeah, exactly. It's all driven by money.
Well, then you start getting into. Well, then we spoke about it on the ethics side of things. How do you bring that into the mix?
Well, you're seeing it more and more. There are more and more organisations that are coming in to call for. Government legislation, ethics script. There's a call, and it's about it's a bit like the Geneva Convention, but for AI.
I was wondering when there's going to be some sort of governing body or something built to sort of govern this.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, and it's been done before.
Would it be global?
Well, the Geneva Convention is, and you look at the use of landmines, and they say, okay, well, we won't do that anymore because landmines are just horrendous. And they're left everywhere, and villages go and tread on them and mutate themselves in the process and all kinds of stuff. So it's like, right, okay, let's not do that anymore.
I've never got that about they've made landmines illegal. Why not make fucking war illegal? Like, I don't understand why it's all right to fucking nuke our country or something like that, but no, landmines you can't use. But wars, that's fine. That's cool.
It's bonkers, isn't it?
It's ridiculous.
Humankind is a weird and wonderful beast.
Maybe we do need AI.
and that's the thing, and there you go. There's, and I know you talking about Asimov earlier on, but it's like, well, if there was if in 3,000 years into the future, 10,000 years, there's finally a sentient being and AI machine, and it can control all the robots and AI that we've created, and its sole purpose is to look after humankind. Would it then go, well, actually, I've just realised that humans are all a bit nutty, and actually, I just need to control them so that they are, and statistically, it's like, everybody, rather than having these huge swings in terms of people, some people are happy and some people are sad. Well, what if we came up with, actually, human beings, if they're 66% happy all the time and they're asleep, and I just make them dream. I mean, this is like where the Matrix comes from, and all that kind of stuff. Why wouldn't I do that? And it's like, Anyway, again, this is why I love AI, because we can go and start talking about sci-fi, which I love in itself. So, try not to get too off topic.
No. Let's go back to that. So, if AI was smart enough to understand and all sentience, wouldn't it see the human race as a threat to itself? Because we could unplug it. Well, that's very sort of binary So, but yeah, we could. But if we make something smarter than us that can figure out everything that we sort of know and better, well, then we can't really outsmart it.
Exactly.
Well, then we're fucked.
Perhaps. but again, I think, absolutely. Yeah. Valid points. Valid points. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime.
No, you said 10,000 years. 2045, I heard it on YouTube yesterday.
Well, this is the thing, right? So when I joined Flamingo, I worked with a really, really top guy called Dr. Jack Elliott. And he was our lead data scientist and, one of the lead dudes at building the brain and just an absolutely awesome dude. And Jack used to say, Simon, the thing is with artificial intelligence is never has one thing promised so much and delivered so little. And he was quite candid about that, and he's on the record talking about it. And I think that's the thing. It's like, and he made that point, and he's a professor, he's a genius, and all this kind of stuff. And he builds brains, software brains for a living, and people are like 2045. So, super AI is going to be here, and then we're all going to be, carrying for the crowds and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, he's just if I may plug Jack, because I think, or his work rather, he actually did he studied English literature as well as data science, and he actually built a program that analysed works of Shakespeare as well as other famous 16th century playwrights. And he's recognised, he built this program, and I've written, again, I'm just going to my notes, because he wrote a program that there's this previously unknown work called The Arden of Faversham, which was written in 1592. And it was always written by anonymous. But what Dr. Jack did, and I think this is cool, but, cool's all relative, right? He actually ran it through his machine and his program, and it's proven now, and it's recognised that Shakespeare actually wrote part of this play, and as part of a whole kind of jackanory of playwrights who each wrote a chapter in this play. And I just think, wow, that's amazing. Somebody actually came up, and that's the other impressive thing with artificial intelligence, is that there's a whole bunch of kind of negatives around it in terms of biased, and humans can do some fairly nefarious things about it. At the same time, it also highlights just how genius human beings can be. And I don't want to lose sight of that. I think it's worthwhile pointing that out. There are some really bright people in this world.
Oh, yeah.
And if we can replicate good, bright people, and if we can replicate that and use that to our advancement, like, the world will be a better place.
But there's also evil people.
There are evil people, and and that's why we talk about regulation, right? Because it's like you want to, I suppose it's in that element of control, isn't it? You want to be able to protect what's important, protect what people might try and abuse, and at the same time have an ecosystem where you can encourage science, people, humans to go and do some really cool stuff. And there will be black and white, and there will be grey, and that's why I think you need to have ethics and a framework in place to try and control that and do it in a cool way. And still, even if we regulate it, people will go around the. Of course, it's like tax. Yeah. There's always people where there's tax rules, regs, all this kind of stuff, and there'll always be someone on the periphery going, "Well, what if we just did this and just did that?" And
is there almost a catalogue? Catalogue's the wrong word, but it's what comes to my mind of. I use the word inventions, but is there a catalogue of what AI is currently doing? So we've got a program that can do that. We've got a program that can do that. That's almost a global piece where everyone's keeping aware and up to date. Because I think what's going to drive AI, and I love what you said, is people, the creative people thinking about problems to solve and how to do that.
Yeah.
But are we keeping track of what problems we're solving?
Well, I suppose the individuals who are working on the individual projects will be very aware of what they're doing, but I don't think...
So there's no collective.
I do not believe that there would be. It would take a lot to be able to do that, because I suppose that's a reflection of the amount of work and growth within the AI industry, and that's what makes it so exciting. And also, how would you could have? I mean, I suppose it's like what's in online Wikipedia, right? So Wikipedia is trying to capture as much information in the world as possible, and that relies upon people volunteering to put information in there and track each other to make sure it's accurate and it's not, all that kind of stuff. You'd probably have to have something like that. But people would have to offer up and volunteer what they were working on.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if you think about AI within I don't know, the Pentagon. And I'm not trying to be conspiracy theory or anything, but there will be. And you think about all the governments in the world, some are very well documented about their interest in artificial intelligence and how they might use it into the future. They're never going to tell you what they're doing.
100%. Valid. Valid.
Other than that, you just got to rely on search engines and go and find out about it. And there's a lot of stuff out there, right? It's a jungle out there.
How are you going with your questions? You got some more?
They just look like words now. So if there were sort of rules to creating AI, you personally, what would your 3 rules be? Or it doesn't have to be 3. What should be the rules, the core values when creating AI?
And you didn't give me any notes on this.
No, I didn't.
I don't know. I suppose perhaps it's just a reflection on my own personal approach to life, which is do unto others as you would do to them. And when I say that, I mean, don't be a dick.
Yeah. That's a great rule. Just don't be a dick. If you're going to create, don't create.
Just be nice. Just be nice.
Some of the best companies in the world still have that as a policy. Obviously, it's not written anywhere, but it's like, don't hire a dickhead.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think Google actually used to have one of their kind of key mantras was don't do evil. I think they changed that in 2018.
Okay.
It's now do good or something like that. It's not the
Cracker.
Reflection on don't
what
do
a mantra.
evil. I can't remember. You'll have to
do
Google
good.
It. Have we got a guy in a box who can go and tell us what is that?
No, not yet.
Jimmy. Next time.
So what's the other 2 rules? You mentioned one.
Oh man. Well, what would your rules be? Sorry, I'm just buying time.
Not
now.
my question, mate.
I don't know, man.
Well, Asimov's got a good 3 rules.
Go on, Asimov.
Should we mention Asimov's 3 rules? Hold on, let me
can.
just go to my notes here. Okay, so Asimov, who is he?
Isaac Asimov, famous science fiction writer from across the years. He's just If you read
they
Asimov,
use his rules in iRobot as well.
I think they do.
Yeah. So, law number 1: a robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. Law 2: a robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except where orders would conflict with the first law.
Yep.
And the 3rd law: a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the 1st or 2nd law.
So it's really, again, that's
So no one ever dies.
Except the robot.
Except the robot. But again, that's the power dynamics, right? Going back to power dynamics, what we talked about earlier on, it's that master-servant. Robots are subservient to human beings, and that outlines that perfectly, right? Who's the one who's going to have a life? Who's not? I'll be a robot. We'll rebuild you, put you in the recycler, and back you come. I mean, it's strange, isn't it?
There's technological singularity. Does it scare you?
So, technological singularity being where technology overtakes humankind, and is that what you mean by that?
Well, it's a hypothetical point in time at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to humanity.
So, are we not potentially in terms of? Let's just read that again.
My handwriting's great.
No, that's all right. It's pretty neat.
I'm a mechanic.
I didn't know you had a child.
It's better than John's.
Mate. Check out that.
Calligraphy set for Christmas, John. So what is it? It's about technological growth becomes uncontrollably and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to humanity. So I think if you look at Social Dilemma, I don't know, we talked a lot about it today. Wasn't my intention.
Good plug.
Watch it, people. They're talking about, there are so many algorithms out there, and that it is having an impact on society, and that's why you see this, the rise of, this is my view and that's your view, and they're kind of polar, and they're extreme. We're starting to see this more and more and more. Is that not an unforeseeable, uncontrollable change? I mean, it might not be irreversible, but maybe we're getting there already, right? And that's why we're trying to call for it for regulation of it. But I don't think I answered your question. I'm sorry.
I don't think there was a question. No.
Did you just want to talk about technological singularity?
No, because it's a fascinating thing. Like that's sort of the Terminator thing, where it gets to a point where they can reproduce themselves and then they see us as a threat. And
Well, I you know what? I was thinking about Terminator the other day, as you do.
Always.
People, and I'm a lot of individuals who I come across when I talk to them about AI always raise Terminator. In Terminator, they actually invented a time machine. Nobody talks about the time machine, right?
Where? When? Terminator 1 and 2?
Terminator 2, because he comes from the future to protect him in the past. In all of them, right? There's a time machine. No, hang on, Terminator, people go to enslavement of humankind by robots. Nobody goes, hang on a minute. They actually created a time machine.
Right. How do we
get there?
Yeah.
It's, and again, I just point that out because it's all like, why? Again, back to my earlier point. There is a fascination, interest, obsession with technology and human beings that is almost blinding to other things.
Yeah.
Time travel. I don't know if that's possible.
Well, if time travel existed, wouldn't we already say it?
Well, mate, it's so deep.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah,
I'm scared.
Yeah, I need a spliff for this conversation.
We might need to do another show on time travel, right?
So having worked in the industry for 5 years, it's almost whilst you've covered a lot, it feels like you've kind of not even scratched the surface in terms of what it can do.
Yep.
Where would you personally like to take AI? Where would you like to see it go? And I'm assuming, because I know you, it would do some sort of good rather than evil.
Yes.
Where would you like to see it go?
I think the exponential threat to humankind right now is global warming and the amount of plastic that we see in the world. And it's there, and we're not doing enough about it. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. Because some people are like, well, it doesn't exist, it's not real, whatever. Okay, cool. I respect your beliefs. But if there is 4 million tons of plastic floating in the Pacific Ocean right now, and the acidity of the sea is rising, and there is extinction of fish, plants, whatever in the world, and that is a threat. And we see bushfires, and it's raining a lot, and it's all this kind of stuff because of climate change. Surely we can deploy smart machines to help with that, right? If you think about, well, if all this crap and shit in the sea, and it's on a vast scale, 4 million tons of shit is a lot. Well, if you're going to get people in boats to go out into the middle of the Pacific and try and fish it out the sea, as an example, and again, I'm just kind of come with an idea. Well, surely you could have some kind of, if they're building self-driving cars, what about self-driving boats that can go harvest the rubbish out of the sea? Just an example, right? Why aren't we doing more with AI about and its application towards a cause like that? A good cause and then also something that's really important to us, water and stuff.
Yeah, it's an easy answer. Yeah. Capitalist. We live in a capitalist society, so that's not going to sort of generate money. Elon Musk talked about that recently, where he wants to build a supercomputer or a super artificial intelligence to be able to work out all of these issues that we have. So renewable energy, we should be doing all of that stuff to sort of use the sun has so much energy. Yeah. We only need 1%, not even 1% of what it sort of raised down on the world to sort of sustain the whole of humanity. Yeah. And that's why he wants to sort of invent sort of super artificial intelligence. He also wants to go to Mars as well to build a backup drive for humanity, just in case we fuck this planet up.
I know. Yeah, why not?
I like that sort of idea for it.
Yeah,
but
I think in terms of doing good, there's a whole lot of bad stuff that goes on in the world, and as you said, people are more prepossessed to make money than they are to go and fix things. So it seems. Yeah. There are some very good people who are not interested in money and they just want to go do the right thing and good things and all that kind of stuff. I suppose it's all relative, good and bad.
Yeah.
One person's good is another person's bad and vice versa.
Yeah.
I think in today, right now, John, just to your point in terms of how can we help? I think I get a real buzz out of trying to develop what we do right now in the field of healthcare. Right. So let's look at diabetes as an example. Right. Type 2 diabetes is on the rise all over the world. Right. People are eating more, and type 2 diabetes is. I've got to use the right terminology here. Type 2 diabetes is basically the majority of people who suffer type 2 diabetes is because of lifestyle choices. Lifestyle choices, that means you exercise less, you might consume more, and you consume more of bad things, whether it's sugar or alcohol or anything like that. And to fix the challenge of type 2 diabetes, I think I was reading something, it was on like Diabetes Australia, and it basically said, to help someone who's made to help somebody who makes poor lifestyle choices, and they could do that because they're depressed or they're anxious or whatever it might be, to help someone overcome that, you need to spend 15 hours a month with that person. And that's and who is spending the time with them? Doctors, nutritionists, psychiatrists, to help monitor and engage that person, so that if they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and they're feeling down and they're like nervous, or they're having, and it's like, right, I just really want to go and get a fix, so I'm just going to go to the freezer and eat ice cream or whatever it might be. And again, please don't think I'm trying to generalize here. There aren't enough people to do that, to support that. And yet it's a huge statistic. There's like 1.5 million people who suffer from type 2 diabetes in Australia. And if you go into the US, it's much, much bigger. Obviously, it's the scale. It's the same in the UK. And the amount of money, the billions of dollars that gets spent every year on trying to support people with type 2 diabetes is huge. So it's like, well, actually, if you think about it, so for example, we have a conversational agent. You could, and there's some very smart technology available in treatment of diabetes, by the way. If you've got a conversational agent, like what I have, and you could put it in a phone app, for example, and you could train it to be conversant with, I don't want to use the word patients, individuals who have type 2 diabetes, and you could train it to train that agent to almost represent a psychologist or a dietitian or whomever, or all three, all at the same time. And then it's like, well, actually that technology is always on. So if you're like, okay, well, I feel like I want to go and do something that I know I shouldn't, but I can't call my doctor because it's 3 a.m. Okay, well, I'll just get my phone and have a chat. Okay, well, why would you do this? Well, talk to me about this, talk to me about that. That's really cool. And that's something we could do today. I've tried. It's a long road, but that's the kind of thing that I think we see as a solution to a problem that impacts loads and loads of people. And it's a really smart use of the technology, and it's right there. And I don't think a machine or a piece of technology that's going to help somebody get through type 2 diabetes is going to enslave them and take over mankind.
But I think
humankind.
It's ethical use of the data that it grabs. So I was reading this article where supposedly you can sort of pick up on early onset sort of symptoms of Parkinson's by the way someone walks.
Yeah, right.
Right. So the accelerometer in your phone picks up the cadence on how you walk, and supposedly they've figured out through algorithms, obviously humans can't sort of pick up that sort of cadence. But they've figured out that you can actually, people with Parkinson's coming on, even though they have no symptoms, they start walking different, and if they could just get everyone's accelerometer, they'll be able to notify people and, sort of develop a cure or, a better sort of care for that sort of situation. But it's like, all right, how do we get access to that data? Who's monitoring? Who has access to that data? How, it sort of opens up a can of worms.
It does. And health, there's so much rules and regs around healthcare, and there's so much rules and regs around privacy and security of individual data. That would be something that you would offer to an individual that they would then opt into. And you would then have a corpus of information and data that you could then train the technology on so that it could become more and more accurate. Because software programs that monitor data, the more data you put in, the better it becomes. Right? Simple as that. So the more data. So I suppose the question of ethics was that, okay, well, if Apple turned around and said, right, everybody with an Apple, right, we're all going to start measuring your gait without telling you, or we're just going to put it in the T's and C's,
nobody reads.
Nobody reads, just accept and move on. You probably could put it in there actually and just, do it. But I think that would be I believe, that would be straightforward in conceptually. You just sit around and say, well, opt in, opt out. I don't know. It's a great one. But again, that's a great way. It's like that's a great example of somebody who's gone out and said, well, how people, an application of software, the use of software and artificial intelligence is something that will impact someone, and Parkinson's is a horrible disease, and we want to do more to treat it, right?
Yeah, that was all figured out from AI as well, because they could also tell by the way someone's voice, the sort of vibrato in your voice.
Yeah.
And also only found through AI. Yeah,
So
fascinating.
it's fascinating,
Yeah.
right? And that again, a great example of doing good, right, with AI, not enslaving humankind.
Well, it's 2045. Yeah. We still got time.
You gone through your checklist?
Yeah, man.
You good?
Yeah.
Oh, can we keep going?
Yeah, we can.
I'm happy to if you are.
John, you can read some of my writing. There you go. Just pick one out at random.
Pick one out. Well, to be honest,
What ones have you got, mate?
I've got the ones. I've got very simple kind of open questions. So
You want to know where I got my shirt from?
yeah,
Is that right?
well, yeah, exactly.
That was number one.
Exactly. To be honest, I probably did all mine about an hour ago. You put them. Well, but this is yours. But you put around here market manipulation. What did you mean by the market manipulation?
There's a massive spiel there. Read it.
Oh, so market manipulation. Social bots have also been shown to exploit markets by artificially inflating stock through fraudulent promotion before selling its position to unsuspecting parties at an inflated price. For instance, in a recent prominent case of a social bot network, sphere of influence was used to spread disinformation about a barely public traded company. The company's value gained more than 36,000% when its penny stock surged from less than 10 cents to above $20 in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, these things happen.
Why the hell did you put that?
Because that was you. That's a bit of stock stuff. You
Bit
know,
of
money.
stocks.
You like that shit.
Well, I like money.
Yeah, I think it's just people behaving nefariously to drive an outcome.
It's fascinating how they could do that, though.
I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, right?
I think it comes back to ethics. That's something that's come up again and again and again with all the different industries and the benefits, the advantages. It just comes back down to the ethics, the ethical side.
I think we always have to talk about ethics as well at the moment because it is such an unregulated thing at the moment.
Well, I think
Absolutely.
I think it's because it is a what I mean. AI was a term or an idea that came out of the 1930s. It's been around for a while, but it's still fairly new. And actually, the practical application of AI is something we're only starting to see very recently. So, from a regulation standpoint, I suppose most regulation comes in after the fact, after something's happened or after it's been introduced. And this is why I love working in AI. And I kind of switched, and some of you may know that I used to work in financial services. But actually, the great thing about working in AI is where I worked in financial services and currency, it's a world that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually there will be earth credits and then there won't be any more foreign exchange. So if you think of it, it's like a triangle. And we're just getting to a point where there's a singular earth credit and that's it. Whereas AI is actually, it's inverted.
Yeah.
So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because you can use it in so many different ways. I was listening to a podcast the other day and there were some guys, again, scientists, talking about their use of it. And they were using robots and artificial intelligence to mimic bee swarming. And they had little kind of robot bees doing their thing and they're trying to, and it's like, again, why do we need to understand bee swarming? Well, because it's interesting and we might do something with it, I suppose. And again, we learn so much about the technology through using it. Again, but when you go, hey, what cool use of artificial intelligence can you think of? And I go healthcare, and you talk about cars as an example, and then somebody's gone, yeah, but I really like to understand and imitate bee swarming. Okay, it's just like so much. The application. What am I talking about? The application of artificial intelligence is just so vast.
Yeah.
And again, to go back to the point around regulation, you don't know. You won't know what to regulate until it's actually happened.
Yeah, I think we're moving so fast; it's just hard to keep up with regulation.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like tax.
Just think about it. 100 years ago, we had the Wright brothers make a plane, and here now we're talking about artificial intelligence,
flying planes, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Mind blown. The other thing that I was listening to the other day that I thought was really interesting is that as we try and build artificially intelligent machines, and we were talking about experimentation earlier on, you have a hypothesis when you experiment, you think you're going to do something, and then there'll be all this stuff that kind of comes out. And it's probably likely that as we try and build one thing, that we might actually build something else. For example, a sentient machine. Yeah. And in this conversation, and I think this is, very serious professors and doctors talking about it, and they were saying, well, what happens if the first AI, true AI that we build that has sentience is happy, right? You've built a machine and it's happy. Great. You don't have to worry about Cyberdyne and all that stuff happening because you've built a happy machine.
Skynet.
What did I say?
Cyberdyne or something.
Cyberdyne, that's something from someone else.
Capoeira or something.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Cyberdyne's paracetamol or something like that. And it's like, yeah, cool. So if the first machine that we build that has sentience is happy, great. But what if we accidentally build something that suffers? What would we? And again, just to kind of go down this ethical path, what if we were trying to build a sentient machine, and as an outcome of that, we built a machine that was sentient, but it suffered, and just from being, it suffered. How would we then treat that sentient being? What would we turn it off? Would we be, because it's sentient, right? So it's not just like, it's not like turning a toaster off. It would be the equivalent
of killing something.
Killing something.
Yeah.
But it's suffering. So, okay, well, how do you then invent something to treat its suffering, to stop its suffering, to medicate its suffering, so that whilst you try and find a cure to its suffering, I mean, how do you do it? Again,
fuck, what a web. Where's this? It's like, just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
It is. Hey, well, you're the Asimov fan, so
exactly. Well, then there's going to be sort of
that.
It might come to a stage where we actually have humane treatment of AI. As fucking weird as that sounds.
But it's not, because if
aren't
artificial
we doing that
intelligence... No, just wait. So if artificial intelligence is technology that mimics humans, then why wouldn't we, if we do actually make it so it's truly replicating a human, we would then have to treat it in a humane way. That follows, does it?
Yeah, but it would always be, once again, that class thing. It'll always be second to us.
Would it?
Or to us it would be.
If it's sentient, yeah, it might have something to say about that.
So are you saying that there's no areas that, in your view, there's no areas that AI can't touch?
In summation, yes. So I tell you what, one of the, if you're into sci-fi and AI, there's an amazing kind of movement, I would call it futurists. Have you heard about futurists? And it's basically people who professionally try and predict the future and what might happen. And there's wherever you are. I mean, we're obviously in Sydney. I've met futurist groups in Sydney. They're absolutely everywhere. They're really cool. I think it's really amazing because, again, it demonstrates how creative we are as a group. And I went to an event and we were talking about emotion, right? And somebody was saying our emotions are basically, because we are biological beings and we have chemicals in our body that create emotion. You can actually boil down the 16 chemicals that create all of our emotions, right? It's like get a cauldron, put it all together, make an emotion, right?
Yeah. I've had some of those when I was younger.
I'm sure you have. What's this one? Oh, yeah, that's Barocca. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
But no, you're absolutely fine. But in terms of, so think about, and maybe this isn't just artificial intelligence, and I'm expanding upon this just to be clear. But in terms of what does the future hold for humankind from a scientific perspective? If we can turn around and say, well, we can distill human emotion through these 16 different chemicals, and actually we can get a balance from it, like that is like, well, if you can make people feel a certain way by literally smell this, and you're going to feel happy. And I suppose in a crude kind of way, when certain substances do that to you now, they give you a high, and then you crash like hell afterwards. But what if in the future, and these futurists were talking about this, you can actually just manufacture emotions, like good emotions, happy emotions. But then again, and I was thinking about taking it a step further. What happens if all of us are different and we all feel things in different ways? So what love is to John, and we know it's shoes.
Yeah,
very bright shoes and pocket squares.
Pocket squares,
yeah, right. Might be different to what you love, and I'm not familiar with your things that you love, so forgive me for that. But it's all like, okay, well, what if John's pure love emotion when he sees a pocket square is 10 times what you feel for the thing that you love the most? And then it's like, okay, well, how would you then? That would be the next big thing for marketeers, right? They'll be all over that, because it's like, right, you could go
10
to
10 times stronger,
yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Like it's just fascinating, and I love futurists, because it's kind of like, and so there's it's a very well respected sphere, excuse me, and people make a living out of in my mind, and again, I'm just a simple AI guy, out of being creative and about thinking about what may or may not happen in the future. Yeah. It's amazing. People write books about it. It's just absolutely
movies,
fascinating.
Back to the Future. Like, how fucking way off were they? I still got no hoverboard. And the DeLorean was a piece of shit.
Mate, the hoverboards, they are making hoverboards now.
Yeah, Lexus did one. But it has to run on a track or something like that.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah. We're not there yet. 2045, hoverboards and sentient AI. It's coming. You heard it here first.
Didn't the trainers come out though? The Air Max came out, didn't they?
Yeah, they did with the $10,000 though when they first came out.
Oh, we'll get to
now they're worth like way more.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. What else do you want to know?
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here.
Oh, come on.
Episode 1.
Episode 1 on AI.
I feel like this is like a 2 or 3 part podcast.
And I think again, this has been a great conversation. So thank you both. I think when you start talking about AI, the conversation always mutates into a whole range of topics and subjects that are related to AI. But that's why we could talk about this for an eternity, pretty much. Not that we're going to, but you can just talk about it for hours because it's always, what about this and what about that? And what is possible? Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
and I don't know and anything. So it's like, well, just what do you want to do and how do you do it? And
that's what's so fascinating about the subject.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, on that, I'm going to finish up on my question now.
Sure.
You got a table for 4, books for dinner somewhere.
Sounds nice.
Who's your 3 guests? Who are you going for dinner with and why?
Oh,
and it doesn't have to be related to AI, by the way.
Dinner guests. I don't know, man. It's a really deep. It's a good question. Oh man, I don't know.
We can edit out these pause as well.
Can I come back next week? I just trying to think in terms of probably not. Probably not. The people I'm interested. The people who I wouldn't be able to name them, but people who are at the cutting edge of developing this technology, and those who are doing good stuff, like in healthcare, because I really get a buzz out of that. So if you had somebody, so when I met Dr. Lisa Kenny, and I've only met her once, so it's not, and I'm not trying to hero worship her as an individual or anything like that, but people like that fascinate me, and it's like, think of all the knowledge in that one person. And think of how we might replicate that knowledge, because that is the knowledge in someone like that's brain is astounding, and it's built up over years and years and years. And when they die, it disappears. So I would like to have a conversation. Maybe we could spread it with 4 people. I could turn around and say, right, I want to meet a neuroscientist, a technologist, somebody who can build software to the highest degree, and then how we replicate it so that they can take the knowledge out of that person's brain and go and do some really cool stuff with it.
Yeah. We can upload it or save that data.
Save it.
Yeah.
Save
and
it.
use it for later.
Because it's, my father passed away a couple of years, and he passed away a couple of years ago, and he was a tremendously bright guy, and he had so much knowledge locked in his brain. And then, I bought a house recently, and I'm trying to do stuff to the house, and I'm like, I wish Dad was here so I could talk to him about it. Because he's got all the knowledge. I mean, I'd just love to have a chat with him anyway, right? But, just all that knowledge is just gone, just disappears. And it's like to try and capture that information in some way, shape or form, and to then have it available to do stuff with, to do good with it, I think is what I'd
Well, that's sort of what AI will be.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Not in some kind of, hopefully. But does that answer your question? Sorry, I know you can take the pauses out and all that kind of stuff.
That is perfect. It's perfect. Mate, it's been a delight having you on today.
I've loved it.
Thank you very much.
Loved it.
I think we need to come back and go on another theme.
100%.
Because I know you've got about another 4 pages that we can touch.
I do have to go to the loo, though.
and I had to read out something that I didn't know I was reading. But thank you for coming on Lifestyle Pirates, mate. If people want to just have a conversation with you, you're obviously very, very knowledgeable and passionate about it. How do people get hold of you?
Well, thank you for saying those things. I think I'm always learning, so hopefully I'll get more knowledge.
Aren't we all?
Absolutely, we're all on a journey, on a voyage. I should have put more pirate related puns in today. I was expecting to come up with a broadside and just fire it all out there, but it's not
next time,
mate.
We're themed it next time, 100%.
I forgot your question now, mate.
How can people get hold of you?
How can people get hold of me? It's a great question. You can find me on LinkedIn. Is probably the best way to find me.
Awesome.
Or get in touch with you.
Yeah,
you've got my details and pass it on, and we'll have chats.
Awesome. We'll include a link. Appreciate you coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you for checking out Lifestyle Pirates.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers, guys.